Welcome all. A warm welcome to all of you for the Couchbase Connect Online 2020. My name is Praneeth and I'm a senior software engineering test at Couchbase. Today, I'm going to present to you the transactions fit performer. This fit performer helps us in the verification and validation of transaction SDKs. Let's start the presentation. So our presentation is going to be something like this. First, we'll talk about the motivation, what exactly motivated us for this to come up with this framework. And then we'll be talking about the architecture layout, how the components are laid out in this particular framework, and then for the various protocols these components use to interact among themselves. Then we'll be talking about the different kinds of clusters we can set up, and then we'll go to the operations part. So operations is the actual place where the actual test execution happens. So we'll be digging a little bit deeper at the operations when we discuss about the operations. And once that is done, I'll be giving you a short demo on the operations part. Once that is done, we'll go with the advantages of using this framework, the future scope, and what is the future we are looking for this framework. All right, so the motivation part. I mean, across every place in the world, especially in the software industry, every product is a outcome of a solution of any particular problem. We were having some problem at Couchbase as well, so this framework came as a solution to it. So basically the thing is, Couchbase supports SDKs in multiple languages. Java, .NET, Go, and C++ are the core SDKs which we support. Automating similar tests for each language individually is a very time-consuming process. So we thought we need to solve this problem to improve our efficiency. So our thought process went something like this. If you look at any test, right, especially from SDK standpoint, you can split that into three major parts. One is the test preparation. It could be prerequisites or the test data preparation part. And next is the SDK evaluation. That's where the actual execution or evaluation of the SDK takes place. And then once the SDK is executed or evaluated, it gives you back a result. You need to validate the result if the result is as per expectations or not. So if you look at it, the test preparation part and the result validation part are language agnostic. So we thought if we can separate these two things from the actual SDK evaluation part, and we can reuse this will greatly improve our efficiency. So what we thought was we'll separate this test preparation part and result validation part into something called as a driver process. And the actual SDK evaluation will be putting into something called as performer process. So there is a driver where the test preparation as well as result validation happens, and then there is a performer where the actual SDK evaluation happens. So the driver should be very intelligent because it is the one which is supposed to read the user inputs, prepare the whole test, and the result validation. Result validation is a very crucial part in any test, right? The driver has to be intelligent. Of course, the performer has to be intelligent as well, but then it could be intelligent only sufficiently to a stage that it will just accept the test, accept the commands from the driver, execute them, and give the result back to the driver. So if it is sufficiently intelligent to that extent, that should be fine. So that was how the whole layout we had in mind. Let's go a little bit deeper into actually how the architecture works here. Okay, we saw that we have two components, right? Driver as well as performer, and these two will be interacting with the Couchbase cluster. So driver is the actual single location where we have all the tests. So the driver is mainly one driver for all the performers, whereas the performer is very language specific. What I mean to say is, for Java, you have Java performer. For C++, you have C++ performer. Go and .NET, they will have their own performers. So that's how it works. So driver will be single for all the performers, and that's where all the test happens and all the result validation happens. All right, let's go a little bit deeper into the driver and performer. All right, so the driver, right? It will before beginning any test, it will talk to the Couchbase clusters. If there are any prerequisites which has to be which it has to execute, it will execute that. And then if we start creating the transaction builder object, you can think of transaction builder object as nothing but a single transaction test. The single transaction test is converted into transaction builder object and sent to the performer. And the performer sent to the performer. So performer receives this transaction builder object, reads it, and execute the transaction on the Couchbase. If it is a Java performer, it will execute the transaction using Java transaction library. C++ performer will be executing the same transaction using a C++ transaction library. So this is language specific. So once this performer executes any transaction Couchbase, it gets the result back. Then using that result, it creates a result object, and then it will send it back to the driver. So driver will create a transaction builder object, send it to the performer. Performer will read it, execute the transaction. It will get some result. It will create a transaction result object, send it back to the driver. driver will read this result object and do the result validation part. All right. So we have been discussing that driver will be creating transaction builder object, and then performer will be able to read it, right? But how exactly is this interaction happening? Similarly, the case with result object, right? Performer will be able to create the result object, and the driver will be able to read it. But how exactly is this happening? So what is the protocol these two components use to interact with each other? Okay. So that is that protocol is established using something called as gRPC. As you know, most of you might be knowing RPC is nothing but the remote procedure call. That is something which we all use in the distributed systems. The gRPC is nothing but Google's remote procedure call. Okay. In this particular protocol, right, we have something called as protofiles. Protofiles are nothing but a flat files. This is the extension is .protofile. Okay. So, but then this is where you create your own user-defined data structures. For example, I want the driver to tell to the performer, hey, performer, connect to this particular cluster. So what I'll do is I'll create a profile and I'll give the cluster details, something like this, a simple string, cluster hostname or the cluster IP, cluster username, password, and the which bucket the performer should be able to connect. And this particular file, right, it has to be shared between both the driver as well as the performer. So once you share it, and Google will help us both the driver as well as performer to understand what is this one if you share the same profile between these two. So once suppose the driver is creating this request object, it has to have all these things. And if suppose a performer gets this particular request, it knows, okay, this is a request object, and I know that these are the contents it should have, and it should be able, it will be able to retrieve the hostname, username, password, and the bucket name, and it will be able to connect to this particular cluster. Similarly for the transactions, you put the whole create your own user-defined messages, and you put it in a some protocol called as say transaction command.proto. So you will create something like that. Transaction command will be of this sort. It should be one of these. Either it should be insert, remove, commit, or a combination of this one. And if it doesn't insert, here it was a very simple, straightforward string, but it is this one is a data structure of data structures. So you say command insert, and the command insert should be something like document ID, content JSON, and the expected result. And similarly, you can define your own data structure for remove. Remove, it could be something like doc ID and expected result. Remove need not have content JSON. Similarly, commit need not have any of them, because commit will commit all the doc IDs which have been mutated in this transaction. So these are something user defined, and you define it in a protofile, and you share it between both the driver as well as performer, and they will know. So that is the kind of contract they will establish among themselves. That contract is something the gRPC gives us. All right. So that's about the protocol, gRPC protocol, right? So apart from the protocol, we also use a few other things from the outside world to make our life easier. So one among them is the JUnit test framework. So it helped us in maintaining test isolation, as in the failure of one test will not affect any which way about the execution of the another test. So they are mainly very isolated way. And conditional execution. Suppose there's a transaction library 1.0, and then there's a transaction library 1.1. And then there is a feature called XYZ. Transaction 1.0 doesn't support XYZ, but transaction 1.1 supports XYZ. So there is no point running test related to XYZ for when you're testing for transaction 1.0, right? So, but you need to run those tests for 1.1. So this is where the conditional execution helps us. So that's a part of the JUnit framework. We kind of built on top of it for our fit performer. And then the monorepo. For example, we just discussed here, right? This particular protofiles has to be shared between both the driver as well as performer. Driver is one, but then you'll have to remember that there is a one performer for each language. So suppose there are four languages which we support, right? So the protofiles has to be shared between the four performers as well as the one driver. So if you have different repos for each of them, right? The same profile, you'll have to ensure that it is in sync at 5 different places. But if you maintain a monorepo, that monorepo is something like sandboxes of repository, but in a larger repository. So that's something like that. So it will help us to maintain all this dependency management, managing all the dependencies and ensure that they're all in sync. So if you want to read more about monorepo, we have given links in our appendix. Please go to them. Similar case with gRPC. If you want to dwell more into gRPC, we have links in our appendix. Please go through them. Both of them should be very interesting for you all. Cluster setup. So as I said, it's not about just running the test, right? Suppose if someone doesn't have any clusters, this framework should be able to set up the cluster for them. So if the user can give any kinds of inputs, it could be number of nodes, number of buckets in the cluster, or the different kinds of Couchbase versions like 6.6 or 7.0, anything. So it will take the user input and then it will create the different kinds of clusters. So either you can install the cluster as well as configure it, or if you say I don't want to install it, I already have it installed, I just need to configure it, that's also fine. Or you already have it installed and configured properly, you don't have to do anything, you can just skip to running of tests. This framework will help you with that as well. All right, so now let's come to the actual test part. So how we will figure out, how we'll go through this one is, we'll go in a phase by phase. First, we'll start with a very smaller one, that's a single operation. Then we'll go to a little bit tougher ones, that is a multiple operations. And then we'll go with the multiple items one. This is a very interesting, this particular thing is a very interesting one. And we also have tests which are much more complicated than this one, but for the sake of the presentation, I will be not going into that one. All right, so let's come back to single operations. So if you remember, we said there is a transaction builder object, which the driver creates, and then it sends it to the performer. Performer will read it and execute that, create a result object, send it back here, right? That's what happens here exactly. You see, it is creating a transaction builder object. It says, okay, create an insert. This is a document ID and this is the doc content it has to be. And if nothing is given, that means you have to expect success. That's a default value. So it's creating a transaction command, which we saw in our proto file. Inside the transaction, it is saying do an insert, and then it is sending to the performer. Performer will take it. It will know, okay, this is a transaction. That means it has to have either insert, replace, or commit. This is an insert. All right. So you also understand that this is an insert command that is done by the gRPC. So this is an insert command. All right. And I understood that this is an insert command. Then I am expecting doc ID, content, and the expected status. So the performer will be able to read them and then execute the transaction, create a result object, and send it back to us. This is the result object. This result object, the driver will later use this result object to for the result validation part. This is how it works. So now we understood how the transaction object is created, send it to the performer, and once the performer is sending back the result, we understood how the validation is taking place. Now we'll go a little bit deeper. So it's not like a transaction will have only one operation, right? It could have multiple operations. So in this example, we have insert, replace, and commit operations. And each insert could have doc ID, the content, and also different expected status. It could be expected success or expected failure as well. So this is a little bit multiple operations in a transaction. Now let's get to the interesting part. So it's not like you'll be only executing positive scenarios always, right? We will definitely want to execute negative scenarios as well. So for that, we have something called as hooks. Hooks are nothing but which help us to induce failures in transactions. For example, in this particular example, we have something called as had this hook or induce this particular failure, wherein when you're trying to get a document for the first two times, this is on call less than or equal to 2 times, induce this particular failure. So when a transaction is getting executed and when there is a get doc call, for the first 2 times of that call, it will induce this particular failure. That is the failure we are inducing here. All right. So then we are saying you create a transaction wherein which will cause this failure. Then we are saying, okay, now the failure has been induced. Now try to get this document. When you are trying to get this document for the first time, since it is fail transient in error, transaction should return this particular error message and it should retry it. And second time as well, it should return this particular error message and it should retry it. By the third time, it should not return any error because we said the error should be induced only 2 times. So the third time, it should not be a failure. It should be a proper success. We did not give any success expected status here because by default it's success. All right, it will send this whole thing to the performer. Performer will execute and then it will send back the result to us. Same thing, the result validation happened here. All right, so let's go to the demo part. I will show you the exact 3 examples which we just used, and then we'll see how it works. So this is a transaction performer. I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. What is this? But before that, let me quickly start the performer. All right, so let me start the performer. What I just did was, there are proto files, right? When you do a Maven install, it will create a code out of the proto files. So we just talked, right? How does a profile looks? This is how the profile looks. There's simple flat files, and then we'll create your own custom messages, and then we'll create send it between the driver and the performer. And this is for the commands. It could be any of these commands, and each command could be or any of this kind. Like remove could be different, and replace could be different, insert could be different, something like that. So here we just created those code out of the protofiles, and then we started the performer. So here you can see the performer started at 8050. Now let's go to the driver. So these are the three tests. It's the same thing which we just saw. So now let's start these three tests. So if you see here, you have something called as config file. While the test is running, let me explain about this config file. This config file will tell the driver which at what port is the cluster. See, it will go and connect to the cluster, and at what port is the driver. We saw, right? The port, the driver was at what port is the performer. We saw, right? The performer was at 8050. So it will go and connect to 8050, and then once it is done, which bucket where the transactions should all be executed. And then once it is done, it will just execute all the tests. All right, let's go deeper into each test one by one. So this is the first test. All it is supposed to do is just do an insert and send it to the performer. Let's see how the performer reacted. Okay. Okay. Before going to that, this was the cluster, right? And then we have something called this cluster hostname and this one, right? So using this, the performer will also know which IP I should be able to connect. See, this is the IP. This is the exact IP which we were expecting to connect. Right? So it connected to this IP. Now let's go to the transactions part. So it created a transaction. It started running an insert command, and then it finished. That's it. Okay. So this one got the insert command done, and then since there were no errors in the validation, it got successful. Blue tick mark. And then let's go to this one. This is the actual where it induces hooks. Right? If you induce hooks, fail for the first time, second time with this particular error, and third time it should be successful. Now let's come back to this one. Okay, first time, it is checking for the hook. It is supposed to fail. Transaction will throw this error. This performer will get this error, and this is the retry option, and this is what we also told the performer to expect. Let's check that. So we told the performer to check. You should be getting this one, and it should be retry. It should be true. So if you see, it said it failed with this one, and it is as expected, and auto retry is also true. That's fine. So this is as per expectation. So it will start the next attempt. Even the next attempt is supposed to fail with a similar error. The same thing happened. The third attempt is supposed to be successful. See, you didn't get any error. So transaction was successful. So the performer created the object, result object, and sent it back to us. Since there were no issues, it completed successfully. Similar is the case with the last one. Instead of one just insert, it will do replace as well as commit. Let's check that one quickly. You see, it started the attempt, it started an insert, replace as well as commit. So that's it. The whole thing got successful. All right, let's go back to our presentation part. You saw the demo, right? And I'm sure, I mean, obviously I can't show the whole framework in this short demo, but I have my contact details here. If someone is interested, I hope someone will be interested. Please contact me. I have my contact details in the slides. All right, now let's go to the advantageous part. So granular testing, you saw it. We can go granular. It's like what are the kinds of failures you want to induce, how many times the failure should happen, what is the expected failure from the transactions, and everything very granular. We just saw here, right? So what are the kinds of failures you want to induce, what kind of failures you want, and how many times it should be that failure should be happening. So this much granularity we'll get it. Both we can check both the failures as well as the expected functionality. That's about the granular testing. Now isolated tests. So as I said, since we use JUnit, the tests are isolated. Like failure of one test doesn't mean anything for the other test. The only catch here is if a test is changing the cluster state, then it might affect. So we need to ensure that end of each test, irrespective of the test pass or fail, you need to ensure that the cluster is back to the good form, or at the beginning of every test, you need to bring back the cluster to a good form and then start executing the test. So that's the only catch. Otherwise, it's all isolated. And then flexible and efficient running. So since we use JUnit, it gives us a flexibility of rerunability. Like for example, this has like 1500 tests. Among these 1500 tests, let's say only like 10 fails. So you don't have to run all the 1490 tests again. You just need to, you can easily run only those 10 failed tests. That gives us the rerunability advantage. And also conditional execution. As I said, like for example, the C++ performer is a very it's just starting out, but Java has been there since the beginning of the year. So obviously Java will be supporting more features, but then C++ will not be supporting more features. So we can tell so for C++, don't run this test, but only for Java you can run this test. So that kind of conditional evaluation we can do using this framework. And it's scalable. You can use any number of nodes in a cluster or any number of buckets or collections. And also SDK level. So currently we have developed in Java and C++, it's in a good shape. We are working on .NET and Go as well. So this is actually the main point of the whole framework. Okay? The future scope. So this is the main point of the whole thing, right? SDK extension, but it also helps in development. For example, we wrote this whole framework when Java was under development. We finished it up. Java is done and we released it off. But when someone is developing C++, Go, or .NET, they can develop that particular Java or C++ transaction library to a certain extent, use this framework, run the test. It will obviously few tests will fail. They can analyze the test and then they can go back to the development and then they start development. So this they can repeat this. So this is kind of a test-driven development as well. And then the cluster operations. Currently, we don't do much cluster operations. We just started, but we are not having much cluster operations. But in future, we'll be having cluster operations as like rebalance, failover, etc. And service extensions as well. Currently, the transactions which we do in this framework are very standalone. But we just started, we proposed a plan and we started introducing Nikil and collections as well to the transactions, integration of transactions with Nikil as well as the collections. That's something we just started. CI pipelines. We integrated this framework with Jenkins and that helped us a lot in releasing of the certification and the release process for the transaction libraries. All right, so this is my contact details. Given the time constraint, obviously I can't demo everything, each and every aspect of the framework, but if anyone is interested, please do contact me. That's my email ID. You can shoot me an email. We can get in touch and I will explain. I'll be more than happy actually to explain more about this framework. All right, thank you. But before I leave you all, just once again, so these are the different bugs we filed, and that's our GitHub URL for this framework. Currently, it's in private because we are still working on it, but we'll be making this open source very soon. And that's a gRPC and monorepo URLs. If someone is interested, please go through it. That's a really interesting topics you'll be finding. All right, thank you.